Hi guys, thank you for joining in on a Sunday evening. I know T20 World Cup of India and Pakistan is playing next to our screens on TVs and other places. Yet, thank you for joining in today with me for an exciting session with Miss Saloni. And today we're going to talk about personal branding, how she has turned her life into this particular field by cutting edge content that she comes up and brings up every time on the OnJuno website. So we would dive into knowing her story and also how personal branding helps us in getting towards closer towards our passion and also create a niche for ourselves. We are so excited to have you, Saloni, today here.
Thank you for having me.
So I think I would dive in and ask about your story before we get into the subject matter here. So just brief us what your story has been like.
Yeah, it's definitely been a non-linear journey. I'm Indian. I was born and brought up in Egypt and the UAE, and then I went and studied in England. And after that, I've been really lucky to live in a plethora of countries. I've studied in Mexico, worked in China, worked in startups across Malaysia and Singapore. And now I've made my way to India, and I worked as a management consultant in Bombay, and now I am a digital nomad and writer.
That's interesting to know. And what made you shift from being a management consultant to this field of freelancing and content?
Yeah, honestly, like I feel management consulting is a very interesting career path for a lot of people, but for the longest time I knew it wasn't for me, and I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see a path out of it until the lockdowns hit, and I was very privileged to have a lot of time on my hands and safety, and so I just started writing. And I realized that, I didn't love staying up all night working anymore as a consultant, but I loved waking up early, staying up late, writing and sharing my experiences on my blog. It felt a lot more meaningful to me, which is why I made the scary jump.
That's interesting. But how did you get intrigued with the idea of personal branding? How did you go through this idea, and who kinds of helped you to get this thought? And what is your motivation that helped you find your story?
Yeah, both great, massive questions. I think to start with the personal branding, 150% is because of my father. He has a lot of foresight, and around 10 years ago, he made me set up my website. I was 17 at the time, and he said, you should set up a website. At the time, I didn't understand. None of my friends had websites. Most of them still don't have websites. I didn't see the value. But I've watched my father build his personal brand, and it inspired me. And then I kind of took a leap of faith to start writing publicly, because I feel putting yourself out there online on social media is a very different ball game to having your own website. And I felt it was important to have my own corner of the internet, because social media platforms, trends, they come and go, but having a stable place where you can project your brand to the world is really important now. I mean, it was 10 years ago, but now it's almost impossible not to have one. And and building a personal brand is something that happened very organically. If there's like a specific part of it you'd want to go into, we can dive into that.
Sure. And if I may ask, how did you get to know your story? Like, how did you find that this is my story that I want to narrate to people? What is your art of storytelling?
Yeah, another great one. So the funny thing is, I believe we all have a story, but I think a lot of people think their story is not extraordinary enough or exciting enough for the world. And believe it or not, I felt that way as well, despite having a very lucky life of living around the world. I was a management consultant. I felt my consulting role defined me. I was nothing but a consultant, and I had nothing really to offer to the world. And then, I started sharing my stories of times in China and Mexico and things with friends. And, the way people were fascinated and were just curious to learn more, and more in two ways: more about the lifestyle in these places, but more about how to actually achieve this kind of lifestyle and what I've learned from it. So as I started telling these stories, my brand organically started to grow, and I decided, this is my story. At the core, I am and I always will be a nomad and a traveler. That's my core. And the kind of concentric circles surrounding my essence are, the different things that feed that core, feed that soul. So whether that's writing or, different types of content creation, art, music, everything that I do, it comes back down to the fact that I'm inspired by the places I've lived in and the experiences I've had. And, living across the world, it sounds glamorous, but there's a lot to it that is not glamorous at all. And I love sharing those kind of personal growth stories with people about being resilient.
That's
That's
great.
great.
I'm sure
I'm sure
that's great. I'm sure not a lot of people have that kind of a story. One and second, no matter how fancy it sounds, it's not always that fancy and glamorous to live across places, and it's not easy at all. So,
Yeah,
what do you think?
exactly.
One, identify a story and transform that into a brand.
So one particular story.
And transform that into a brand. Basically, that's my question.
Yeah. So I think nowadays, when you're talking to prospective employers or even prospective acquaintances, a lot of people, the first question they'll ask you is, "What do you do?" And we tend to define ourselves by our jobs rather than by our stories or by the experiences that have shaped us. And I'm trying hard to change that narrative for myself, at least. Um, I feel turning my story into a brand is not something that was easy or linear. It's more about, okay, so I have these experiences under my belt. I've learned about resilience. For example, the fact that I moved to India as an Indian passport holder and have never really fit in here or really struggled to adapt here. I've written a lot about that, and that has become a part of my brand. The fact that you know travel is imperfection. Travel is it's a bumpy ride, and I found a lot of people resonated with my stories of identity, lack of identity, getting lost in places that you feel like you should belong. And so the brand building wasn't, one day I wake up and this is my story, here's my brand. It was more of an organic process, and you kind of build up the blocks, and you can always go off brand as well, which is something I'm sure we'll dive into as well.
Sure. And I think before we dive into that, I just one more question for you. That a lot of people do think that their experiences are not worth sharing, and maybe some of the people think that people can't connect to my experience because it has been unique, right? For example, it has been a common experience of anyone, like let's say doing a corporate job. So there's nothing new in their experience versus 10 others who are doing a corporate job. But my view is that that's not the case. Like everybody sits into a different set of team, everybody sits into a different set of people. And since people are unique, their behaviors are unique, and hence the experience that you have will be wholesome, but it will again be very unique to you. So what is your take? Do you think experiences like they get very quickly connected to people, and they are easy to connect, or you should build a content which is more generic that connects people?
That's such a good point. That's a really good point, because this is something I struggled with a lot at the beginning. I was like, why would anyone be interested in, my random meanderings online and my self-indulgence? And I've got so many friends at Purva that I try and convince to set up websites, and they all tell me that they have nothing to say or nothing to show. But every single person has something, you might be, you really don't have to be traveling the world to have a story. You might be really into crypto right now, and you'd like to educate people on crypto, or you're a journalist and you want to show people your work. I honestly see zero harm in kind of finding out what it is about you, and there is something about you because there is about everyone, and projecting it to the world. There's this book by Austin Kleon called Show Your Work, and it's a tiny little book, and it's inspired some of the biggest YouTubers and creators out there. And it simply just reminds us that we're all amateurs. We're all kind of figuring this thing out together. Some of the biggest names you see today were not overnight successes. They were not extraordinary people, quote unquote, whatever extraordinary means. They were just people who had something to share and they felt it was valuable. And to your point about, relatability, I think a lot of people might not relate to my story because it is a slightly different trajectory to kind of living in the same place all your life. But that's exactly the connection I wanted to make between travel and personal growth, because I feel like jumping out of your comfort zone, experiencing new cultures, trying new things, exposing yourself to uncertainty really fuels your personal growth journey. So I talk about leaving your comfort zone. I talk about resilience, focusing on what you can control. And these are things that are applicable to anyone. I have friends who read my blog in London and they're not traveling much or anything, but they find that the stories really resonate with them because they're going through a particular thing where the personal growth story helps.
That's true, and a very valid point that you kind of just said, that content has to be relatable, and people actually connects and relates the content you write, just like I think a lot of other content platforms like Scoop Whoop, Filter Copy, who kinds of create short videos, and those videos kind of just automatically fits into our lives, just automatically fits into the schema of what we are going through, our emotions and our thoughts, just because everybody gonna go through the same kind of emotions, and it's just that they've given a very simple format of a video to kind of portray it. And then we just, for example, last week only I was watching Little Things, and that was out on the with season and the season finale, and I realized that this is a story not only about a relationship but also about the bond that two people are sharing. And just because the content is so relatable today, we are giving a very upvoted series visible something else which is less relatable. You kind of don't like it much, you just watch it for the heck of watching it, but you clearly do not connect. And I think
Exactly.
that developing that connection with the content, also with the person, or the personality, I think in general is important. And that's how the gap gets automatically bridged, and you become hooked to a particular website, to a particular newsletter, to a particular content platform.
Exactly. Exactly. When I was just starting on my digital nomad journey, I had no idea where to begin. And there's a writer, Paul Millard, who left his management consulting career and also followed the pathless path, as he calls it.
Yeah.
And reading his newsletter is exactly what kind of prompted me to just pack up and try his digital nomad journey. And I think I'm on a much smaller scale, but I do hope that that's what I achieve with my writing. That's my purpose, is to inspire people to move out their comfort zone. And like I've said, it doesn't mean moving countries. It can literally mean trying a
Yeah.
new skill or
Agree.
anything.
True. True. So let's dive in slowly into in some bits and pieces of creating a personal brand or finding your story. Let's just dive in.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah,
yeah. So I think so. I've alluded to this a bit at the beginning. Building a brand is definitely not an overnight thing, and that's not just a personal brand. That could be a consumer brand. We know how branding works. Building trust, building a following are all things that take time, and it's an organic process. I think most people know that. I think the thing that we tend to forget a lot is that this process is not linear at all.
yeah,
You could, when I started, for example, when I started my blog in March last year, I was just writing about books because I'm a passionate reader. I just wanted to share book reviews. And I didn't think it would go anywhere. And I thought, this is me, I'm just a small book blogger. But the more I wrote, the more ideas came out of me about, making my travel stories relatable to others, on personal growth. I started writing about those experiences and those resonated far more with people. So I transitioned from a book blogger into a personal growth blogger. And then there's times when you just go completely off piste, and that's great too, because that adds to your voice. I was just using this example when I was speaking to my dad earlier. I wrote a whole piece in defense of English cuisine, which I think is the best cuisine in the world. And that's nothing really to do with my story or my brand. But I feel like if you don't experiment, if you don't kind of push yourself to try new things, and you're like, oh, this is my niche, this is my brand, I must only do this, you miss out on a lot of flavor. So I do feel like a lot of us, especially me, at the beginning, get wrong with branding is the idea that this is my niche, I must stick to this, I cannot write about anything else or create videos on anything else. Whereas I don't think that should be the case. I think we're multifaceted. And so I think that's the most important thing to remember when converting your story into a brand. I think you're on mute.
That's true. I think one thing that we all kind of get hooked to is that, this is my core. This is where I place my idea, place my identity. I can't change my brand identity. And what you've brought up is really great, that you should be multifaceted. You should think about new things. You should explore at least before finding your niche. And even though you have found your niche and giving up a good content, people might end up liking and joining those kind of content as well. That's true.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I feel a lot of us get very hooked on, again, I'm speaking from all my mistakes, I hope it helps people in some way, but a lot of us get caught up in what will my following think, or what will happen, will are they following me for the books, and now I'm not a book blogger. I mean, with the English food example, I sent out the newsletter thinking, no one's going to open this one because it's just defending English food. And that had the most opens, the most reads, the most, engagement in the past 6 months. So what I love about the internet is that people online can surprise you, and you should not shoebox yourself ever in your branding journey. The brand will evolve, and stay true to your core. I mean, I will never, like I've mentioned, I would never change the kind of core of who I am, but the things around it can change as your world grows.
I agree. And what are your thoughts on the number game? Everybody keeps talking about the high number of social media followers you should have, high number of presence you have, high engagement on your particular set of content pieces. While I'm sure, like, there are gonna be some content pieces which gonna like work across the platform, and they're gonna be shared, they're gonna be liked and loved. But then there's also a time when the same similar kind of content might not work at the
Yeah.
internet. So, how do you think about this number game? What comes to your mind when you kind of sit down and write the content for someone?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, Apurva, because a lot of us just focus on the numbers. I did for a while. And I mean, you can see my social media following now. I have a tiny following across all platforms. And I don't think, I really, really don't think that the numbers and the social media matter so much to me at this stage in my journey, but I will talk about it in general. Um, I reckon a lot of people get obsessed with optimizing. We have hustle culture. We have the idea of optimizing your free time. Your website should make you money while you sleep, and monetization is key, and things like that. And if you're not making Instagram reels, then are you a content creator? There are all these kind of questions and concepts floating around. And I believe that a lot of people disregard the personal website because they think you're not on Instagram, you're not on social media. How are people going to find you? Who reads blogs? Who checks out websites? But I can, from my 1.5 year experience, I have got so much, if you'd want to put it this way, I've got so much ROI on my work on the website. It's kind of what I like to think of as delayed monetization. So, people will read my blog post, for example, which is something we'll go into later. People, the founders at the company I work at right now, found my blog first and read those, and that's how I kind of landed in the interview seat. And for me, that's kind of ROI for me. That's I'm showing my work in a way that impacts people, and maybe these are just 2 people, and I don't have a million followers or anything, but right now I'm focusing on quality over quantity. But I think, as we were saying before this session, social media is critical. There's no way I would even be doing this session if we didn't meet on Twitter. So it's important to focus, but not obsess.
And that's true. I'm sure that this particular personal blog or personal website, whatever you call it, it looks like a portfolio of yours that kind of get into your ROI and let's say delayed monetization, as you said. That's true. But again, I would like to have this question clear up right here, that should a personal website be treated as a portfolio? Like, I'm sure after this particular question series, we're gonna get into and delve into how a personal website should be made and how it should be looked, and have a session on with you on that. But just have as a thought, that should your personal website be a portfolio of your work? Like, people kind of create a portfolio as in advertising people, creative people go down and create a portfolio for landing up a job, or it should be more a representation of who you are.
That's a really good question because most people think website equals portfolio, and
Yeah.
this is funny. I mean, this is my story, but I'm sure it's a story for many people I know as well. Um, I never, I never started the blog or the website with the intention of getting a job. It was really just a passion project. I was just writing, like I said, staying up late and writing and enjoying it. And there was no end goal. I mean, that's probably not the best advice or a lack of planning, but there was no end goal. I was just writing and I was enjoying it and starting putting it out in the world. And slowly, it has become a portfolio. If people ask for my portfolio now, I will send them to my blog, and because that shows people exactly how I write, what I write about, and things like that, and kind of my evolution as well. I think that's the beauty of a website and a blog in particular. You can see my writing skills in March 2020 versus now, and you can see the progression. And I think that's definitely a wonderful thing for employers to see, prospective employers. Um, so I feel, and it's funny how you kind of segmented portfolio and your own personal thing, whereas I feel like we need to be really authentic now more than ever. So my blog posts can get very personal, but at the same time, they are my portfolio. So I feel being my authentic self, as kind of canned as that sounds, has been instrumental in showing people, how genuine I can be about the current role that I'm applying for, or podcast I'm doing, or whatever it is. Especially on LinkedIn, I've noticed that people just gravitate to authenticity. Um,
Yeah.
we're done with the overly professional, I'm pleased to announce type posts. Now, people want to know where you work, how you work, and even things outside of work, who you are.
Sure, sure. I think let's just take a break and pivot our conversation towards how to actually build a personal website, or what are the important components that you feel and you want to offload to our audience to at least start and given a broad overview of what a personal website is and how it should look.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a massive kind of roadblock that a lot of people, including myself, have faced is the "I'm not ready" variety of thoughts. I'm not ready to start a website, or I don't have the skills to make a website. I would urge everyone to go to Paul Graham's website. He has millions of readers, huge following, and he has one of the most basic websites in the world. Very, very simple. It's just the writing. So I think before anything, before you even think about starting a website, just remember that it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to code, obviously. You don't even have to use a fancy template. This is, at the end of the day, a way to showcase your work. And however you want to do it is fine. There's no kind of barrier to entry. Anyone right now can make a website, basically. I'd say when it comes to personal websites, with mine in particular, I've had kind of a photography section of it, but I think when you're setting yours up, you only really need 3 pages. You need a simple about, a simple contact, and a vlog. And the blog
Uh,
doesn't,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, I just cut you in between, but can you also just showcase your website and how you kind of went about it, so that I think it's more easier for people to kind of grasp.
Yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see my website there. Yep.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Awesome. So yeah, so again, this might look fancy, but it's really not. I've started this website as a photography website basically, and there's a lot of different things that we can explore in it. But like I said, all you need is a basic about page. So this is the best place to pitch who you are. So for me, I used to define myself as a management consultant, and now I say, writer, digital nomad. Then a bit about my story. So whatever your story is, whether you're a crypto enthusiast or an English teacher traveling the world. And then I've actually added my CV as well and a social link. I feel like having my CV on the about page has been really useful. Just seeing by the number of downloads, I wish I'd done it earlier. And yes, it's very simple. And then we've got a contact page where people just can get in touch. And I've had a lot of interesting requests via email and the contact. And like I said, a blog. So when I'm talking about the blog, I don't necessarily say you have to be a writer. Um, you can just you can just jot down thoughts or ideas or concepts. I feel even if you're a digital content creator, like a video creator, filmmaker, coder, whatever you are, I feel like writing is a skill and a habit that brings you a lot of catharsis and clarity. And just jotting down ideas and sharing them with the world, or if in place of a blog, if you're an artist, then you can showcase your art as well. Is there like something you want to dive deeper into?
A bit of what are the normal components basically. I want to ask this: what are the normal components you think that a personal website should have, like you said, an about section and a bit of what you are, who you are, and followed by a contact page. But if someone really wants to stand out in terms of having a personal website, what do you think is a key thing to have here? And how it should be done? Basically, should it be it's all about you talking about that, I've traveled this place or I've been at this place, this is what I am, or it should be a more generic stuff being put up so that people can relate more? What are your thoughts?
I think, as I mentioned, there definitely shouldn't be too many bells and whistles on your website. Your work should stand out. That's the most critical part, is having your work stand out. And, in terms of what should I add to my website to make me stand out, it would be adding yourself, adding your work, adding your writing or your art or whatever it is. And I feel that this blog is very quite basic. There's nothing extraordinary about it, but there might be elements of extraordinary in the writing. And I really don't think you need to. I don't think there's some magic secret sauce that add this to your website and you're done. I really think your work has to be the star of the show.
Fair enough.
I'll show you Paul Graham's website now that we're here. So he's a writer with millions of followers. He writes extremely well. His clarity of thought is unparalleled. And as you can see, it's a very, very basic website. And that's fine because it's what stands out are his essays. And that's what attracts people. So I really kind of want to hammer home the point that you really don't need to do much.
And often people really have this question, okay, while even if we sit down and build our own resumes, or if we drop writing a cover letter, one of the more pertinent questions that always people kind of face is like whether I should write this, whether I should not write this. I don't know how will people think of, when I put this out. How do you deal with that kind of a dilemma? Because I'm sure when you are having a dilemma and writing a 1 or 2 page resume, similar questions gonna be popping up in your head when you're gonna put something out for the people, right? And when I say people, there's also a hint of criticism and a backlash that we all think through before putting something up on social media or our personal websites or any other place for that matter. So how do you deal with that, and how do you make your decisions that this should go up and this should not?
Yeah, that's a good thought. I think so. My social media personas are very different to my blog. I feel the blog is more profound, and I write a lot of self-indulgent kind of personal growth things there. Whereas Twitter as a platform, I use a lot for making friends and sharing work, sharing ideas. Instagram is, in full honesty, literally just kind of to keep my friends around the world updated because right now it's almost universal social media platform for us. So I think when it comes to the blog, I will always think twice or three times before publishing anything because it has become such a big part of my brand. On day one, there were no inhibitions. I just wrote what I wanted, and things are changing now. I mean, if you are sending that blog to prospective employers, there definitely has to be a line. And there's two different audiences I've got right now. I've got the prospective employers or things like that, as well as the readers, my email subscribers. And I never ever worry about whether something will resonate with people anymore. I think that if it resonates with me, if it makes sense to me, I'm just going to publish it. Um, but with personal growth, it's very easy to get too personal. It's very easy to give too many details about your life. So I'm definitely very mindful of that these days, especially as my following grows to 300.
That's true, I'm sure. So, what do you what do you think? Like, I'm sure that this personal branding has helped you pivot your career path. What are your thoughts? How it can help someone, or what are the benefits of having a personal branding done? And also, I think I'll take a step back, and before we say that we have a personal branding, I'll say it's a personal blog or it's a personal website that really is the first step to have a brand in place, right? So, what are your thoughts on like how this particular complete schema of things help people?
The idea that I'm putting my thoughts and ideas out into the world, and people come across them serendipitously, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's through my WhatsApp status, whatever it is. And just like you and I found each other on Twitter, you found a tweet of mine, and
Yeah.
and we connected because you took the time to read my blog and things. So I think uh, having a presence like that is critical. First and foremost, because Googling people is just very extremely normal now. I mean, if an employer has your CV in front of them, they will Google you, or they will check out your LinkedIn. And being able to see, I mean, if you imagine it, you Google a candidate, you either get their LinkedIn profile or you get their website. And having a website that shows your character, I feel like the photos on my website show who I am as a person and the other side of me, which is my skills. It beats everything. Totally throws CVs out the water, forget that. But it even beats, a LinkedIn profile, which is only customizable to a certain extent. So I feel if you start your personal website tomorrow, you know, without sounding like a kind of hustle culture uh, activist, I think it will really transform your life for the simple reason that there are people out there that you don't know, who don't know you, and it's this realm of unknown unknowns. And there are loads of opportunities out there that you may not even have if you don't have a website. I mean, I'm not sure I would be here speaking to you right now without a website.
True. And now you've brought this question up or the point up about a LinkedIn profile. And while I was also thinking about creating a personal website, and I got into that question that what is the different or the unique point or unique component that I will be offering when I create a personal website, because anything professional which is about me, and as we said that there's a line that we draw because they're out potential and prospective recruiters, or it's always about career at the end. So what unique I should offer on my personal website that's not up there on LinkedIn? It's like a mimicking my LinkedIn profile to an to a better extent or in a better format for that matter. So, what are your thoughts that how do you think it can be unique, and how does the two kind of help you in their own respects to come up with the new stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I think LinkedIn and website definitely complement each other. But like I said, LinkedIn is only customizable to an extent. I feel the way to stand out on LinkedIn itself is to post content. You just can't be another profile anymore. You can't be another CV anymore. And like I said a bit earlier, just sharing very authentic things about myself, about the fact that I'm working from a jungle tree house one weekend or whatever it is. That's what people gravitate to. And I again have been trying to convince friends to if not start a website, at least start posting on LinkedIn. But everyone is, scared because, what will my employers think? What will my ex-employers think? What will my uni friends think? And I fully understand that because I went through the same thing. And then there just gets kind of a plateau, like a kind of breaking point where you don't mind anymore what others think. And then it turns out that those same colleagues and ex-colleagues are the ones who reach out to you, are inspired by whatever it is you're doing when, I'm really just posting on LinkedIn. It's nothing special. So I think a major barrier, of course, in all of this is getting over the fear. I think once you get over that kind of what will people think,
Validation, basically.
yeah,
It's a validation loop, right? Once you get over that validation loop, things start changing for you. Your perspectives change, and you more think of from the perspective of what I am offering rather than what my offering will kind of affect by others and what they'll think. I think that's where the change kind of starts coming in. Okay, that's great. I was thinking to pivot my particular talk on personal branding with you towards a little more on the content piece. That today there's a lot of content out in the market. How do you think a content marketer or a content person should stand out in that particular list of a lot of content creators?
yeah. So by content marketer, do you mean writers or content in general?
Both. I mean, whatever way you want to choose an answer.
Okay, yeah. So I think, yeah, as we've mentioned, having a portfolio, I think there's this kind of notion of, like I mentioned, having a website is outdated and I prefer Twitter or I prefer Reels, and that makes sense. And I think having a clear social profile is important. But I think there's something that a lot of us don't consider, which is platform risk. I think if you look at, for example, Vine, the 7-second video app, uh, people got hugely popular on that, and then in a matter of in the space of a day, the whole app disappeared, along with people's portfolios and the videos they created and all the work they'd gone excited about. So I feel it's always important to have your website in the background, and you can start small. So like I mentioned, this book Show Your Work by Austin Kleon, you don't if you're an aspiring content marketer or already a content marketer, just start by making whatever it is that fuels your excitement. So if you feel like making a reel and matching it with music, then just put that up there and start sharing it with employers. Put it on your CV, make your CV really linkable. um, and as a writer, again, like I said, I started the blog very accidentally, but it is such a good way to just show people what you can do. I mean, uh, documentaries, become a YouTuber, and yeah, and I don't think it's saturated yet. I think there's huge scope for growth. I have friends who started YouTube just 2-3 years ago, and they've seen massive growth. So it's never too late to showcase your work.
So, have you ever faced a content writer's block? Like, there are times when you have a lot of content running in your head, but you just can't let it out to the world.
Oh my goodness, so many times. The thing being, so I'm a perfectionist, and being a perfectionist and a writer, or a perfectionist and a creative, just doesn't work because you'll never put your work out there. And so that's why it took me 7 years to kind of build up the courage to publish. So I think there has to get to a point where you just think, okay, this is good enough. I have writer's block. I cannot write anything, but I really need to ship this. Like every month, I send out a blog post, no matter what. And some months, I think my blog posts are really not that good. I have writer's block. I just sit there. It's clunky. It doesn't flow. But I think it's far more important to be consistent than to get bogged down by the details of, oh, this is not that good. And I think with art, especially, we're lucky that our interpretation of good can change from person to person.
I
But consistency is the massive, massive, like important factor.
How do you think consistency has helped you? Like, good you brought that point up because there are a lot of people, and it's always, said that, you need to be consistent, you need to be out there every time. And there are times when you don't feel like putting out your content. And I feel that it's okay if you're not able to put out a content for like a week. Like, for example, for a weekly blog, if you skip a week, it's okay. But then the idea is that if you skip a week, then you get into a luxury of skipping a week, or skipping your consistency altogether. So what do you think? How do you think consistency has helped you, and why is it one of the more important factor when it's about content?
Yeah, consistency. I could talk about this for the rest of the session, but I will keep it concise. Consistency is a crazy thing because so many of us, we try new hobbies and we try new things, and then, we don't see quick results. We're so used to,
Yeah.
especially today, so used to seeing like, quick results. Like you do this, instantly you have an answer. And when you're building a blog, a YouTube channel, whatever it is, growth is slow. It's relatively really slow. And to be able to hang in there and stay consistent is the real challenge. Not writing well, not creating good videos, none of that. I think just showing up every time. So personally, consistency has helped me in building my own skill. I mean, forget the prospective employers or my readers or anything. The fact that I'm writing consistently every week has made me a far better writer than if I just waited for that one perfect blog post every
I
6 months. Yeah. So that's one part of it. The second part is you can't build a portfolio without work. And you have to have work. You have to show up and do the work. So I think even if you think it's awful, just put it out there, see what happens. Don't judge yourself before you've allowed the world to experience your work. But one caveat I do want to make is that a lot of us, as this happened to me last year, kind of got hooked on consistency to the point of, hustling and getting burnt out. And you get kind of addicted to, oh, I must stay consistent because if I skip this, then, like you said, you get into the luxury of skipping again and again. And I just want to kind of reinforce the fact that it is okay to skip. It is okay to fall off the wagon, even for a month if you need to. But you definitely should get back on. And the more content you create, the more pressure you will feel because the more subscribers and followers you get. But it's all part of the process. It's all about learning to know that it's not the end of the world. It's not something to take so seriously. But if there's one thing that I'd want people to take away from today, it would be to keep going, to stay consistent.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree to this particular point that it's okay to take a break, but it's also important to come back, right? You have to make a comeback. You have to show up at some point of time, at least for the heck of kind of work you do, for the kind of things that you want to showcase. You have to like be there upon toes, no matter how the engagement goes, no matter how people think about it. But I'm sure with time you're gonna reap the benefits of the seeds that you're sowing today in like a small pieces and bits of efforts that you do. And also, when we say that there's anything that is running to our mind, we have a dilemma, we have a question, we just have to write that same question on the Google, and Google gives us like 10 more options to search through. That we are that quick, then I'm sure building something for yourself, or for a community at large is not going to be that quick process for someone, because we're not buying out things, right? I'm not doing a buy and a sale here. I am selling out some content. I'm selling out a service that people will take time to kind of go through, right? I
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I think my last question to you for today gonna be what or how does a day in a content writer's life look like?
Yeah. So am a content manager at a neobank based in Bangalore, and that essentially means that I'm heading SEO for our brand, and I manage a team of writers. So my day job is pretty much uh, very technical. It's not, there's no creativity or writing in that sense. It's a kind of technical role where I'm developing outlines for articles, doing SEO keyword research and things. So this is very different to my blog where I'm not optimizing for search at all. So I spend a lot of my time doing that, copywriting as well. I don't tend to write articles for the company I'm currently at. It's more of kind of managing the content, overseeing. I've done some PR work on it, end user communications. For the first time, I've tried my hand at writing push notifications and kind of experimenting with that creatively. And then outside of work, the writing I do is very pretty much the personal growth kind of thing. And I think as a writer, as a creative, you have so many different options. If one day you want to do copywriting, you can. The next day you can write a long personal essay. So yeah, it's a very dynamic role.
That looks like a fulfilling day at work every day, and I'm sure something new gonna come up, considering it's a new bank and it's one of the most trending places to be at.
Yeah, definitely. And for going into crypto, so here I am trying to learn everything.
And that's if one thing that you want to leave the audience, one thought, one closing thought that you want to leave the audience with for today's session, or in terms of post or anything, what would that be?
It would be that everyone has a story, every one of you has a story to share, but you need to share it. I'll give a personal example. If I hadn't started my blog last year, thinking that I don't have a story, I don't have anything unique to say, which is what I thought, I wouldn't be sitting here with you. I wouldn't be in my current role. I would most likely still be a management consultant, which is something I didn't want. I wouldn't. I wouldn't have had met amazing friends across the world, fellow writers and people on social media, and I wouldn't be the person I am today, who is fulfilled and doing work that is meaningful every single day. It sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. And yeah, so if I can tell you one thing, it's that please take that leap. Please like try it out. Uh, Take some hours out, make a personal website. Like I said, it can be very basic. I think mine is pretty basic too, and see what happens. Like I can guarantee something will happen, and something cool will come your way because you're showing the world who you are.
Well, that's great. I think that's a great thought to end today's Sunday evening with. I'm sure it's more about going out places and trying yourself out, and something new definitely comes up your path, which you might not have even thought, but then something shows up just like an opportunity, and then you feel like taking that opportunity and exploring a new field. I think, and that's the great thought. Thank you so much, Saloni, for doing this with us. I really love the conversation. We talked about a lot of stuff, right, from your story to personal branding to building a website, and then delving into a life of a content creator. How does it look like? That was great. Thank you so much. And
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And
all
I'm sure
right,
we'll do this again soon.
sure. Let's hope for that. Thank you guys for being with us today on this YouTube live. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.